right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending Host-Based Detection, Forensics, and Response with Velociraptor. My name is Wes Lambert, and I am the Director of Support and Professional Services at Security and Solutions. I don't necessarily work with Velociraptor every day, but whenever I get the chance, I like to dabble in it a good bit and love to play around with it and think it's a really amazing tool. So just wanted to share that with you today, just share all of its capabilities, go over kind of an introduction to its features and how you can leverage it from a deeper perspective, from a detection perspective and monitoring, for monitoring hosts in your environment, in your enterprise, and then also just kind of understanding how you can use it to perform, other types of response actions and automate actions, maybe via the API and things like that. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it. Again, about Velociraptor, it is an open source endpoint monitoring and response platform. So it's very awesome to be able to use something that's free and available to do all this work. And Mike Cohen, the primary developer for the project, has really done an amazing job at making all of these great features available for Velociraptor that I'll talk about here in just a minute. Now, Velociraptor is built on VQual, and you might have heard of SQL, you might have heard of KQL, all these query languages. There's certainly a lot out there, but VQual is great in that it's this very flexible language that has a fairly similar, familiar syntax, and this is really what drives Velociraptor and makes it so flexible and so powerful, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. It's written in Go. It's supported on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, so it's really easy to get going on. If you have folks that are running any of those types of systems, it's great to be able to get that going quickly and easily. And it is very lightweight and very scalable and easy to use. And I think with a single server, if I remember correctly, it can be around 10 to 15,000 endpoints. So it's very, very cool to be able to have that level of scale and have that to be easily deployed in that manner. Now, Mike Cohen also worked at Google, where he worked on Google GER. Some of you might be familiar with GER, Google Rapid Response. Now, Velociraptor is similar to GER in the sense of the host-based detection and forensics perspective. However, one of the key things I think that sets Velociraptor apart, and Mike has spoken to, is really that flexibility that makes it so powerful. In the past, at least, GER has been kind of tied to the way that maybe Google is wanted to drive the project, and some things are kind of locked down and maybe not as flexible as we would like them to, just in some regards. But Velociraptor just completely decouples that and makes it a lot easier to extend and make the platform itself more powerful. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment. So I spoke about VQual, Velociraptor Query Language, which is what really drives Velociraptor, right? So what VQual allows us to do is pretty much anything. Because it's so flexible, we use VQual to collect data from endpoints. We can use it to perform, collect artifacts and perform that monitoring and those response actions, and just manage the Velociraptor server in general, right? We can use VQual to manage the data on the server. We can use it to manage the clients. We use it to upgrade the clients, right? To delete them. It's very flexible. Again, and I keep saying flexible, but it is in the way that you can use that for so many things and extend Velociraptor in so many ways. So we have right here just a basic example of the syntax here, where, really we're just grabbing the time right here, right? So we're just selecting UTC timestamp from clock, and that's what we see right here. Again, a very simple example here, but hopefully it'll help to kind of introduce you to the concept there. Now, VQual, most of what drives what you do with the VQual and inside of Velociraptor is really going to be that concept of functions and plugins. With those functions being things like select or following select or where keywords, and we're acting on the data, right, that we're trying to get from the data source, which in this case is going to be info, the plugin, and that plugin is going to generate rows So bits of data, right? So different pieces of data, which we'll go through in just a minute. And then we're acting on that data with those functions. So you can kind of see the difference there, and we'll see that more in just a bit. Now, the architecture of Velociraptor, you have the GUI, which is where the analyst will interact. You have the front end, and that's where the clients are going to check in and perform their kind of command and control communication, right? That's where they're going to be issued tasks. That's where they're going to communicate with the Velociraptor server. So we don't necessarily, as analysts or as DFIR practitioners, we don't communicate with that front end directly, but that's kind of, you know, a sense of the architecture there. And then of course you have the file store and the data store, where we're going to store information about the different artifacts that we're looking for, and then other files or artifacts that we've collected, right? Pieces of data or those files. Now, as far as deployment modes, Velociraptor has a few different deployment modes, and it's really easy to get started by deploying Velociraptor if you want to evaluate it by just running the Velociraptor GUI command. And you'll see that right here in the slide. Ooh, let me go back. Sorry about that. And you can grab the latest binary here from Velociraptor releases, and you can see that there. And so from there, you would just grab that binary and make sure it's executable, and then run that Velociraptor GUI command right there. And you can get started there, just going through and experimenting and trying out different artifacts and creating queries and seeing what Velociraptor has to offer there. Check something real quick. Sorry about that. Okay, let me check this slide window real quick. I'm just going to take the webcam off here. Should make things a little bit better. Sorry about that. Thanks for the heads up on that. So again, it makes it very easy to run Velociraptor, right? So we can run Velociraptor otherwise in a standalone mode, kind of like this with the Velociraptor GUI command. We can run it in the cloud. We can scale it across multiple front ends now. We can upload files to the cloud, right, if we want to collect those locally and send those up from a local collector instance. So we have this triage and offline collector. And with that, we can build a custom collector as well, and we can package in different binaries and tools and other things, different default artifacts that we want to collect. And we'll get into artifacts in just a minute here. But we can have all that pre-packaged into that compiled binary, packed into the Velociraptor binary, and then go off and hand that to somebody else, and they can go off and run that and collect the data and bring it back. Or if we're working a case, we can go take that binary and we can run that, get the data, and send it up to the cloud if we want to, right? Import it to the server. So it's really, again, flexible in that manner that it allows you to do these things. And then again, if we're developing artifacts, if we're testing certain things, certain queries, we can spin this up, say with Velociraptor GUI, and then go through and maybe start with a notebook or start with developing those artifacts in that way. Now, artifacts are really going to be a compilation of queries. It may be one query, right? If it's just, it may be a very simple artifact where you're returning a query. Maybe you're looking up the process listing for a box. Maybe you're looking for the the MFT or whatnot. It may consist of one or multiple queries. And so we see here this particular artifact right here at the bottom, where at line 16, we'll see that select all from info, limit 10. It's really just a very basic selecting from the server info plugin there. So that's a very very basic artifact, right? And that's just how you get started doing that. And what these artifacts are intended to do is really encapsulate that expert knowledge that DFIR practitioners and InfoSec practitioners have gathered, right? So these guys can share these artifacts with us, these ways that they've determined they can find these artifacts on the host file system. So they've written these queries and they put them into these artifacts in Velociraptor, and we can take those and we can just go run that artifact, right? We don't need to learn a whole bunch about the MFT. We don't need to learn a whole bunch about I-30. We don't need to learn about USN, although it's useful to have that knowledge. It's very useful also to be able to run and get the data you need without having to do a bunch of background research. And these artifacts, they run kind of in different modes, or they're different types. You had this client artifact here, and the client artifact is kind of like a one-shot artifact you might run whenever you're collecting data from a client. Client event artifact might be whenever you're trying to watch for certain events, and so this is running at an interval, right? It's polling continuously, and maybe producing rows whenever it hits those conditions where it gets results from the artifact. And the same thing with the server artifact. A server artifact might be to manage the server. A server artifact might be to look across completed flows, right? Artifact flows. So if we run a bunch of artifacts on clients and we're looking for certain results, or looking to see if there was a successful result, from the server perspective, we can also run that ad hoc or through a server event artifact to notify us of that. So again, very useful to be able to have that capability with these artifacts. Now, we talked about artifacts and kind of in a basic fashion what they are. Now, you can hunt for artifacts, right? That's the whole point of really having these queries, these contained queries, is to be able to hunt across hosts, right? So we can schedule a hunt in Velociraptor, and we'll go through this in just a little bit. We can schedule a hunt across all of our clients. Maybe we have a subset of clients. Maybe they have a specific label, like they're a certain group of servers. Maybe they're all Windows hosts. Maybe they're all Mac OS hosts. And then clients will enroll in the hunt as they come online. You might have folks that are in remote offices, right? They're not connected, something. Whenever those clients come online, they'll enroll in that hunt, and then you may get results as they start rolling in. So that, in general, the hunt concept is going to be when you're hunting across various hosts, or all of the hosts in your enterprise for maybe a specific file hash, maybe a specific executable, maybe you're doing a differential query. Lots of different things there that you can do. And then you also have the targeted collection. For example, maybe there's an incident or there's an alert that comes from your IDS or something else, and you want to look at a specific host, you want to look at a specific client. And these artifacts, you can target these clients and select which artifacts you want to run here. For example, the PS list. We can select those artifacts and then run those on an ad hoc basis for that client, and then get those results back. We can then go look at those results. Maybe there's some files uploaded with that we want to go triage further. Lots of stuff we can do there. Again, that's going to be for that targeted single host collection. And then once we've run these hunts, once we've run the targeted collections, maybe we want to filter the data down a little more. So Velociraptor has this great concept of notebooks, which are similar to Jupyter notebooks you might be familiar with. And it allows you to test your queries, whatever you're trying to look for. You can test those before you implement those in an artifact that you use later. You can also post-process results for your hunts or for your collections, right? So whenever you get something back, that result set, maybe you want to filter it down. Maybe you want to look for a certain file name. Maybe you want to look for a certain executable, right? Certain things like that. You can post-process that, and it's very useful whenever you're trying to sift through that data quickly. Now, from the detection perspective, those client event artifacts that I mentioned is where you'll, a lot of times, if you're setting up detection from the perspective of enterprise monitoring and things like that, if you think about maybe, things like monitoring Windows event logs, things like monitoring, certain process creations, like things like sysmon, and where you might be sending logs back or data that you want to alert on in a consistent manner. And you can set up those client event artifacts and those server event artifacts, and they'll notify you, similar to that of an IDS alert or something else, right? You can set up an alert for, right here we've got an example for the Hive. You can send that off when an artifact with results completes, and you want to be alerted on that. There's server alerts, the Hive alert, there's Slack alerts. You can do this for pretty much anything that you can think of that you could reach via an API or HTTP, lots of different ways to extend that there to alert on that when you have those detection mechanisms in place. Now, aside from the detection and the monitoring, when you're in the middle of a case or in the middle of an incident and you want to triage a host and analyze all the stuff, all the artifacts and all the data sources on that host, you can do stuff like start a packet capture. You can examine process memory, search for process injections, right? It just, depending on where you are in that response, and in that case, you can search for MFT for a file, right? See if it exists on the host, see if it ever existed. Maybe it got overwritten in MFT, maybe it's in USN. Maybe you want to see the usage and activity from SRUM. There's lots of stuff that you can gather here, and we'll go through in just a minute. And it's really just lots of useful data that you can get quickly and easily from these hosts, whether hunting or via a targeted collection. Now, I want to talk about tools a little bit. So Velociraptor has this concept of tools and using external tools to augment its capabilities. And I spoke a little bit about the flexibility of Equal and how we can integrate and extend Velociraptor. And this is one of those ways that we can use the tools concept from Velociraptor to deploy additional tools to help us with our investigation. Maybe, for some reason we want to use SharkHound, right? We want to include that with our Velociraptor collector exe. And maybe we want to be able to triage the host with that binary. We can do that. We can wrap those tools in there. And things like if we want to install sysmon on a host and deploy that out to a bunch of different hosts, or deploy it during an engagement where we don't have a bunch of visibility, we can do that. We can wrap that in and have that additional visibility. We can have that additional capability whenever we're performing that investigation and help us get closer to the ground truth, right? I want to talk a little bit about remediation. Maybe after we've triaged and we're looking at stuff, maybe we want to take a semi-automated approach. We can kill processes with Velociraptor. We can pretty much do anything that you can do with arbitrary PowerShell or other shell commands. We can integrate that in with our, kind of our triage or response pipeline, and maybe there are certain servers or certain hosts that if we see this particular scheduled task or we see this particular service, we want to kill it immediately, or we want to remove it. Maybe we want to isolate the host as soon as we see that. Maybe we have a SOAR solution and out of, for some reason, whatever context we've gathered, we wanted to do this. We can tie into this and achieve this remediation action, right? So it's very cool, very useful to be able to do this as well. And I spoke a little bit about the SOAR and the automation. Velociraptor comes with a gRPC-based API. It's ACL based, so there are certain permissions with things you can do with the API, kind of similar to what you would be doing in the web interface or the GUI. For example, maybe you can only read artifacts, or maybe you can only add artifacts, or maybe you can do everything, right? So there's ACL-based access to that gRPC-based API. And you can install PyVelociraptor, the client, if you want to interact with that. Add a user, and then you can perform those automated response actions or context gathering, right, via a SOAR tool, maybe something like Shuffle or N8N or Node-RED or whatever your fancy, right? There's lots of things you can do there. And again, just to run a simple query here, we have an example. PyVelociraptor right here at the bottom, just supply the config file for the API. And that's just, again, a very simple command, just to select the server info. But it gives you an idea of how to start leveraging that once you want to go that way. And there's lots of great documentation. Sorry about that. There's lots of great documentation as well for that API here. And then I also have a blog article that I did with security and Velociraptor and N8N here that you can take a look at that kind of illustrates that concept. Aside from enriching those, aside from the automation, you can also enrich other data sets, right? Maybe you use Splunk. Maybe you use Elasticsearch or the Elastic Stack. Maybe you use Security Onion. You can use either the Elastic Flows upload or the Splunk upload to upload any relevant events. This will run as a server event artifact. So you can run this and it will watch for whatever you want to watch for. If, maybe it's a certain file hash that was found, or it's, just whatever kind of event that you want to watch for. You can then send those events over to Splunk, over to Elastic or Security Onion, and then be able to correlate that with other data sets, right? Maybe you want to correlate this host-based activity with some other network-based activity from Zeek or Suricata in Security Onion, right? And it's awesome to be able to do that, to have that kind of visibility where you're talking from the host, the network, and everything else. And just tying that all together is really powerful. All right, well, enough about the slides and enough about me talking. Now I just really want to go through how Velociraptor looks, how you might use it, some useful features, and maybe a slight use case where we can go over how we can leverage Velociraptor to increase our visibility and to be able to increase our forensic or detection capability. So that's what we'll go through now. And I'll switch from the slides. Whoops, let me get out of that. My bad. Okay, so if we can get this, and just let me know if there's any issue there. Just should be able to see now we have a Windows 10 VM, and what we're going to do here is we're going to run the Velociraptor GUI command, and what that's going to do is it's going to set up a Velociraptor server. It's going to set up a Velociraptor client locally on the box. And what we'll be able to do with that is go through and evaluate those different artifacts and kind of see what Velociraptor is all about. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and run that command. And I know it's probably kind of hard to see, but we're not going to be running too many commands here. Let me just go ahead and grab that. If I can get the input in there. Come on, guy. Should be done. There we go. Alright. Alright, so Velociraptor's starting up, right? It's starting up the client and the server process right now, and then it's going to take us over to the web interface here in just a second. It's going to pop up a browser tab. There it goes. Okay. It's going to take just a second here. Alright, so we're at the Velociraptor landing page here. And we can see just the, kind of the home here where it talks about we can do various things here. But it's going to go ahead and show you the client that it's spun up over here. You can see if we hit enter here, just give it a second to update. Whoops, I think I hit refresh by accident. Alright, we can see that we now have our client connected, right? So it's going to be the same local Windows 10 box as the server is running. After we ran our Velociraptor GUI command, you can see the client ID, the host name, and some OS version information. And we can see some other stuff over here on the left. Again, the home tab, the hunt section if we want to start a hunt for any of our clients. We can see the different artifacts that Velociraptor has to offer here. And we'll talk about that there in just a second. Obviously, there are quite a few here. There's various Linux commands, generic ones. So we have a forensics local hashes query. So we can maintain a local file database, a hash database on the client if we like, and it will crawl. We can have that updated, and then we can query across our grid or across all of our clients, and then see if that hash is found on any of our boxes or was at one time on the box. And then it kind of gives us a place to go whenever we're trying to scope an incident or scope a file being in a particular location. And there's lots and lots of other Mac OS server, and then lots of Windows stuff if we filter on Windows right here. Lots of stuff which we'll go through in just a minute. But real quick, I just want to pivot back over here. So this would be your server events or server alerts kind of page, and this would generate rows and information. For example, if we've modified artifacts, if we've had a client enroll, right? Just various things that we can set up here. We'll go through that in just a little bit. And then we have right here just a server collection tab, and then the notebooks. So these notebooks, I have a sample one here, event logs modification. Something we're going to go over here in just a minute. And so again, these notebooks are pretty cool in that they are a way that you can test those queries. Expand it here. You can test those queries and kind of iterate while you're building those artifacts. So real quick, so I don't bore you all too much, I'll get into an actual artifact collection. And we'll click on this client ID, this client that's enrolled right now. And again, you have that kind of basic high-level information. You can see if anything was collected already for this client. And nothing yet, just the basic generic client info, which we get when we're enrolled. So real quick, maybe, I want to go through a use case. So let's do this. How about I want to see what happens when we mess with the event logs on this box, right? So maybe we can use Velociraptor for checking the modification or the disabling of event logs. So let's see. Now, one of the things that I want to illustrate here is just one of the things that attackers might use, maybe. So an example for staging malicious payloads or managing malicious payloads. An attacker maybe would use something like bits admin, I think, to maybe live off the land and to not alert all of the NRS or EDR tools, right? So maybe we want to try to blend in and use something like bits admin, and maybe we want to try to cover our tracks, right? So let's run this as administrator and just get another PowerShell prompt here. So I just want to walk through maybe how we can use Velociraptor to detect event log modification. First, I just want to walk through how we might see these event logs, and give me just a second. It's running just a little sluggish here. All right, just get that. Just get event viewer open here. Alrighty. Taking the time to demo. Alright. And it's loading up here. Maybe not. Well, I thought it did. Alright. Come on, event viewer. There it goes. Alrighty. Okay. So we got that place, and so I spoke about bits admin. Let's go into the application services log directory and narrow in on the bits client log. Give it just a second here. Curious if OBS is slowing me down just a little bit. Alright, so while we're waiting on that, let's see if we can just get out of here real quick. Come on. Alright, I think we're back now. Alright, cool. Come on. Alright, we'll do that a second here. demo gods are not kind today. Alright. Alright. Let's pop out of here, click this guy. Alright. So we can expand Microsoft here. Go ahead and grab the command we'll use to stage this. Alright, so we're going to use bits admin real quick, and so Mike Cohen actually walked through this in a blog post on the Velociraptor blog, wrote an article about this, and so I just like to kind of step through this procedure here. Now, what we're going to do here is we're just going to use bits admin to just curl Google basically, and pull that down into a pretend eval file, eval ps1. For example, an attacker might do this with an actual eval file. So we'll just pull that down and ensure that's successful. And then what we'll do here is, alright, go ahead and complete, and then we'll go ahead and pull down the windows here. Alright, and bits client. Alright, so typically you can see here, just give it a second here. So we'll see this activity, right, to the bits client Windows event log. We're going to see the transfer activity that just occurred right here. It's going to be the 16403 event right here. And if we drill into the details, see this right here, just give it just a second. Alright, we'll see that we pulled from that remote site, in our case just google.com, and then into the local file, user eval ps1. Right, so we see that there, and we're tracking that activity, and that's cool. But what if an attacker wants to obscure their intentions or cover their tracks? And a lot of tools like WinLogBeat or other log shippers, we watch Windows logs, we watch Windows events, right? So maybe in an effort to subvert some of that ability to monitor that, maybe an attacker might disable an event log, right? So that's fairly trivial to be able to do here, right? An attacker can do that here, just disable the log, right? So with that, maybe if we refresh or get out of here and try running that again, we'll just refresh. There it is. Okay, well, let's see, it's 335, and I just ran that command. Okay, not seeing it. Let's refresh again and make sure we're not getting any other new events. Yeah, it seems like it would be a problem, right, for those log shippers to kind of subvert that mechanisms and kind of fly under the radar, right? Yeah, I think that would definitely be a problem, and something that would be useful to be able to detect. And we can detect that with Velociraptor, right? We can hone in on these event files. Maybe we're watching certain event log files. Maybe we're watching various event log files, and we want to know about those modifications that have taken place. See that maybe those event logs were maybe enabled or disabled. And so this actually correlates, and Mike points out in his post, this correlates to a registry key for the event log, obviously, that it's going to be the HKLM, push in here, that's not rolling. It's going to be HKLM software, Microsoft Windows current version, Win event channels, Microsoft Windows bit client, operational enabled, and so that sets a flag there. I'm going to avoid, just because of the VM selections here, trying to navigate through all that. But it does set that flag there, and so we can monitor for that flag with Velociraptor and see if any of those event logs were disabled, right? So I think that would be pretty useful. So let's go back over here to Velociraptor, and maybe we want to start out in a notebook and make that a test our query. See if there's been anything going on with the event logs, and that's where we have this notebook here, and this basic equal sample here, right? So right now what we're looking for is really just any. We're going to set a key, a variable called key, and we're going to look for that registry key. We're going to search for all those channels, and then we're going to see filtering on, in this case, the bits client software, or the event log, and then we're going to check and see what the channel name is, the publisher or the provider. We're going to check and see the enabled status, right? So in this case, previously we had a 0 and 1 here for the analytic not being enabled and the operational being enabled. But we'll go ahead and save that. And it does look like that's changed. So, it'd be very useful to be able to, to take that and to pump that into something like a client event monitoring artifact, and then alert us whenever something like that happened, right? It would be super useful to be able to do something like that, and we can do something similar to that with the diff plugin. So if we take this right here, the original query that we have, and then we just add a few more things here. So I'll just add a select all from diff, and then I'm going to define the query. So we're just basically saying that our query for this diff is going to be whatever we were looking for the event log there, right? See if the stuff was enabled. So we'll select that as a query. We'll select a period. We'll do 5 seconds, right? And then we'll do a key. Let's see, where was it? Yes, enabled. That's right. All right, we'll do a key of enabled because we want to key off of this column here, enabled. So this is gonna. We can see this creates this enabled column here, which tells us if it's enabled or not. We're going to key off of that, and then we're going to basically show any results for every 5 seconds if there's any change in that. Right? Whoops. I'm going to get a syntax error there. Alright, so key enabled. Okay. Alright, so right now what it's doing is it's going through and it's looking to see if there are any changes than when it last ran. Right? So if we go in now, and we go ahead and change this again. Ooh. Sorry, slowness here. There we go, a little bit of lag. Alright, and we enable it again. We should see a result pop here. Just a few seconds. Alright, so in this case, we detected that it was actually enabled, so it's a little bit in the opposite sense, right? But it gives you an idea of how you can use that to schedule, to check for the differential there, right? To write a query to see if those have been tampered with. And so we actually take it a step further with another artifact. There's an artifact called event logs modification, and this is built into Velociraptor, right? And so what this allows you to do is basically check not only the channel name to see if it's been disabled, but the provider name as well. Because all we're looking at here, when we look at this, is we're looking at the channel, right? So we see that it's enabled here, and we have the option to disable the log here. But we really want to know, right, it'd be more useful if we can check the provider. Because if we don't check the provider, and it still says that the channel is enabled, then I wonder if we could be missing something, right? Let's try that out. So if we do, look at it. Alrighty, yes. Alrighty, so let's just open up the registry editor here and let's see what that provider configuration actually looks like. Because again, that is actually going to be what controls the underlying production of events for that channel. So if we go in here and go under System, Current Control Set, Control, and let me double check my path here. WMI, whoops, come on. Alright, WMI autologger should be, where is it, event log, there it is. Alright, now, so what this is going to be referenced by, this GUID, is going to be relative to Bit's client, right? So whatever we saw when we were looking in Velociraptor in the notebook, right, whatever we saw here, we saw this publisher right here, this GUID, so EF1CC15B. If we find the equivalent in here, which would be down here since these are alphabetical or alphanumerical, and if we look in here, this will be the enable property here will actually be telling us if this provider is enabled. This is the BITS client provider, right? So if we actually modify this value, change that. Now we will have to do a quick reboot, but have no fear. And so an adversary, an attacker might do this, right? Obviously, you know, an unscheduled reboot might be kind of out of the ordinary. So they may choose to do this and lay low for a minute while while you receive Windows updates, and it updates from that, right? So there are lots of opportunities here where this could still come into play. So we'll give this just a second here, and just wait for this box to reboot. It won't take too long, and then we'll see the effect of the provider-specific disablement, and see what we can do with from the Velociraptor perspective. We'll give it just a second here. And while we're waiting on that, I'm just going to get back over to the slides here. And so I just want to point this out real quick, just so while we're here. Again, while we wait for this, if you want to test Velociraptor, just try that Velociraptor GUI command once you pull down that binary. There's a Velociraptor Docker project as well that I've been working on, and then I know Jason Ostrom, he's at SANS. He also has a Blue Cloud and Purple Cloud Terraform deployment option, so if you want to spin Velociraptor up in the cloud there and experiment with some host-based forensics and detection and that sort of thing, it's pretty awesome, so definitely check that out. And then also this blog article and the blog in general, Velociraptor's Velocidex's blog for Velociraptor is really great for being able to really understand even more what Velociraptor has to offer. Because again, this is really only scratching the surface. It's very hard to kind of go through all that functionality again, in such a short amount of time. So definitely do check that out and do play around with it. So let's check back and see our host. All right, it's coming up here. Just a little longer. And again, I'll go ahead and do this for the best use of time here, because I know we are coming up at the end of this here. Feel free to contact me at @therealwlambert if you enjoyed the presentation, or if you want to learn anything else about Velociraptor or anything. If I can answer any questions, my GitHub is at github.com/WesLambert. And please be sure to tweet at and follow Velocidex. Mike Cohen again is doing some really awesome stuff with the project, so please do give him a shout out at how awesome the tool is, and if you have any other ideas there. Alright, so our box is back up. All right, so we disable that from the provider-specific, registry key, and we want to go back into Velociraptor real quick. So I'm just going to launch a PowerShell session real quick. PowerShell, not power settings. All right, that going. Government there. Downloads Velociraptor GUI. Alright, so that guy will spin up here in just a minute, and then we'll also spin up Event Viewer real quick. Launch that guy. Alrighty. Alrighty, don't need that. Alright, now real quick, what I want to demonstrate again before we go here, I know I'm running up against time. Grab one more PowerShell session. And again, the demo gods. Alright, expand that. Come on, chugging along. Alright, spin that. Alright, move back here. Okay. Now, again, if we run the bits admin command, let me go ahead and expand the bits client log. So just a second here. Keep doing that by accident. Severely underestimated, I guess, the streaming impact on the performance here of the VM. Okay. Alright, so if we go into scroll past it. Alright, bits client. Alright, so we see here, once this loads, we'll take a look here. If we right click, we can still see the disable log function. So the log, from our perspective, still looks like it's enabled, right? But however, we've disabled that provider option in the registry. So we see this last invocation here at 349, which was just from the updater itself, since bits client is used for Windows Update kind of thing. So we're going to run our command again, the bits admin command, to download our evil PowerShell script, and we'll let that complete. And now we saw that this operational log was enabled, right? So if we double check, all right, it's enabled. But if we refresh here, Well, I think I accidentally did the wrong key there, so suffice it to say that if you actually disable the correct key there in the registry, the intention there is that the provider itself can be disabled, and it can appear as though the channel is enabled still, but you will no longer get those events. And we can use Velociraptor to get that. Unfortunately, I think we're out of time here, unless you guys think I can go a few more minutes. It's completely up to you guys. But that was really what I wanted to demonstrate there, was just the power of being able to correlate that and pull that information in. So let me go ahead and double check the registry. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I completely skipped over it. It was actually the enabled one. I guess that's what I get for doing a live demo. So again, it would be this key here, and then so what we can do with Velociraptor is then pull that in, use this. I'll show you the artifacts here. Uh-oh. Did I kill it? Oh, no, wrong one. Did I kill it? Where are you? I think I killed it. Nope. GUI. Suffice it to say, I won't take up any more of you guys' time, but I will show you right here the artifact that you can use to detect that, and Mike explains it much better in his post where he disables the correct registry key. I apologize for that. Notifications. Logs right here. Okay, so yeah, so basically what you would do here is you can search within a specific time frame, or you know, just of a specific log in general, and then you can kind of correlate if that provider is actually disabled or if that channel has been disabled, and then again monitor for that with Velociraptor and alert on that. So I'm not going to go back through since we don't have much time left here, but feel free again if you have any other questions and or any comments about my failed demo here, feel free to let me know, and I will be glad to respond and help you out as best I can. Once again, feel free to contact me at @TheRealWLambert, and then follow @Velocidex. Mike, I apologize for the failed demo.